a man unexpectedly discovered a bizarre scene. Countless dark magic actually gathered into a sphere. Then the small ball exudes a liquid like ink. Unexpectedly, after the liquid formed, it turned into an incredibly huge skull. This is the nation-destroying level monster Skullface Lord. The level is as high as 804. Even the protagonist faces him with full pressure. What's worse, Monster Skullface Lord can also summon endless undead. Even if the protagonist limit off, it is difficult to eliminate such a number of followers at once. At the critical moment, the NPC servant of the protagonist once appeared. This is the second cooperation between the master and servant after 500 years. Before Monster Skullface Lord appeared, the protagonist and his party successfully helped Rashia to change jobs, achieved the goal of this time. They wanted to go back to town, but at this time, the scene of magic gathering appeared. The first time Monster Skullface Lord appeared, a punch broke the entire Spirit Plains barrier. Seeing such a powerful blow, Wilhelm immediately understood that this is a nation-destroying monster. Before he had time to escape, the undead around were summoned by Monster Skullface Lord. For a while, 3 people were surrounded in the center. Seeing this, Wilhelm proposed to break through the encirclement and escape with the protagonist. Unexpectedly, the protagonist refused him, and said that he would stay alone to solve the monster. After the protagonist limit off, the momentum on his body directly stunned Wilhelm. The protagonist stated that he could not ignore this guy. He will find a way to solve Monster Skullface Lord. Then he gave Wilhelm a speed enhancement. Then the protagonist immediately released magic in the opposite direction. The powerful force directly made a gap in the encirclement. Now there is no worries. The protagonist also started his battle. At the beginning, Yuzuha on his head spewed out blue fox fire. Where the fox fire is contaminated, all undead turned into ashes. Then the protagonist also started. There was red lightning in the katana in his hand. Then instructed to insert it into the ground. Instantly eliminated countless skeletons. Even the ground also cracked a huge pit. The huge light made Schnee, who was also in Spirit Plains, discover. Feeling a familiar presence, she immediately moved towards the direction of the protagonist. On the other side, the protagonist thought that the move just now was enough to kill half of the enemies, but when he opened the map, he found that he had greatly underestimated the number of enemies. At this time, a light point representing allies quickly approached. At the same time, the monsters in that direction kept disappearing. The protagonist had already thought of something at this time. He immediately ran in that direction. Sure enough, his guess was correct. The person who came was his former NPC servant Schnee. Before the protagonist could say anything, the undead behind him caught up. Seeing this, Yuzuha was very sensible. She jumped to the ground and opened a barrier to temporarily block the monsters. The next second, Schnee directly threw herself into the arms of the protagonist. For her, this is seeing her master again, after living alone for 500 years, even if she has countless words to say, and there are various things she wants to ask, but hearing a sentence from the protagonist is enough to make her feel relieved. At this time, Yuzuha's barrier could no longer hold, although there are still many words to say, but the most urgent thing to solve now is the huge monster Skullface Lord in front of him, and the master and servant joined forces again. Just happened to have a magic trick that completely restrained the undead. However, after the battle was resolved, Monster Skullface Lord, who fell on the ground, actually spoke at this time. Give that power to me. As soon as the voice fell, it died. Then the protagonist picked up its gem. 2 people and a fox found a place. The protagonist recounted his experiences in the game. He said that after defeating the boss, he walked into a light door and lost consciousness. When he came to, he was in the world 500 years later, so he didn't just run off somewhere for 500 years. After learning everything, Schnee also spoke about the information of this world. At that time, all NPCs suddenly became autonomous, and the servants of other players were all in a panic discussing the master has disappeared. At that time, Schnee and a few others heard these and knew that their master had successfully cleared the game. The protagonist was a bit surprised at what Schnee said. What Schnee said was not that NPCs had consciousness, but suddenly they could act autonomously. After asking carefully, he found out they had self-consciousness during the game period, but they couldn't act completely autonomously, so they knew about the game. At the same time, Schnee also knew that after the protagonist defeated the boss, these NPCs will disappear. But what's strange is, everything she thought did not happen. Everyone is still alive. So the protagonist's servants went to various places in the world to find the protagonist protagonist during the 500 years. I didn't expect to see the protagonist again in this situation. Just when preparing to return to the city, the protagonist accidentally discovered that Yuzuha's tail had become 3. At this time, Yuzuha also woke up. What the protagonist didn't expect was, Yuzuha actually said good morning. This scared the protagonist. It turns out that the moment Monster Skullface Lord disappeared, Yuzuha suddenly began to evolve. The protagonist didn't understand the specific reason. He had to let Yuzuha speak only through thoughts for the time being. At the same time, the tail was also disguised as one. In this way, people will not discover Yuzuha's race. On the other side, the princess of the kingdom and her party came to the place where Monster Skullface Lord died. Originally they were also dealing with a large number of undead. Suddenly the light that enveloped the sky in the distance eliminated all enemies. When they arrived at the scene, all that was left was the huge pit, and the red katana left by the protagonist on the ground.
これほどの刀を打ち、はやぶさの紋章を刻む鍛冶師といえば、自分の知る限り一人しかおらんのです。
誰だ？
ハイヒューマン。その中でも鍛冶の技を極めたとされる黒の鍛冶師ですよ。